thanks for being here. That was really cool that you were able to show up. Maybe I'm just kind of keeping you company while you're doing something. Whatever it might be, hopefully I can teach something at the same time. I think it's really important because I really think that, like I said, I've been teaching animation for many, 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 many years now. And this is the kind of thing that is, has transformed a lot of the way that many people look at animating. I think if you're really new, you will struggle at the beginning with understanding how to start. Everyone's got like, well, where do I start? Where do I start? This is where you start. Get access to reference, shoot your own reference, get 2 angles of the reference, whatever you need to do, but just keep it simple. Don't do like backflips and like really complicated actions. Do something simple, like a sidestep, just a simple hop up, like something that's short and like it's complete, like an action, nothing like a cycle, because unless you have a treadmill, I wouldn't recommend that. Treadmill, if you do have one, it's an awesome way to learn because you can really learn walk cycles and run cycles very, very, very easily because you have a perfect stationary on the spot reference that you can actually shoot. It's amazing. So I think it's a great place to start because what you can do is have access to this reference, and then you gotta have a way of breaking it down. So as long as you know how to use a software like Blender or Maya or Motion Builder or whatever it might be, something you can set keyframes on a rig, then all you need to be able to do is just find some poses and then be able to recreate them. And that in itself is hard. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is really not, I'm not gonna lie, it is not an easy thing. The guys make it sound easy. This idea of like, well, find the poses and then you're good. And you just have to like make the poses in 3D. That's way easier said than done. That takes practice. A lot of people ask me a good way to just get better at animating, just, passively almost. Nothing's passive about getting better at animating, but what you can do that's not some huge arduous task is like the equivalent of sketching in for animation in my mind would be doing just taking your favorite rig basically, or go find a favorite. We got lots of rigs on Agora.Community, so go there and just grab one. Spend some time to learn it, understand how to manipulate that rig, and just spend time posing. Like go and find some references for poses, and just spend a night posing. Just get used to seeing a pose and recreating it. Seeing a pose and recreating it. It's like life drawing. It's like sketching people. But instead it's using a rig. You're exercising a very similar, there's a bunch of overlap there. There's parts of your brain that you're gonna be exercising there that you would also exercise if you were drawing, but there are a bunch of other things that are happening that are different. But I think the main things that are important that apply to animating and being good at animating in 3D is you're gonna be doing it. So this is such a huge tip for those who are really trying to get good at posing because it's such a core skill. This idea of looking at some reference and being like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's the pose I want. Let's go do it over here. There's a lot going on there. Your brain needs to interpret space, and it needs to interpret the small differentials, the difference between poses. There's a lot of analysis that goes on there, and it takes, some people are just really good at it, and some people it takes a lot of time. And if you're one of those people, like a mere mortal like myself, you just need to put the time in. And once you do, you will get good at it, but you got to learn to like really look at it. Ask yourself, how can I get better at this? How can I, come up with mechanisms that allow me to look at something that's 2D and then recreate it over here in this virtual 3D? There's people have different tricks, and people use grids on the 2D videos, or on the pictures or whatever that sometimes help people. It's like sort of like, remember in art class many moons ago, maybe less moons for some of you, many moons for me. And they would teach you how to like put a grid, like draw a grid on a picture that you want to reproduce. And then it was easier because you would break that drawing or that image down into smaller chunks. And then all you had to do is reproduce the chunks, right? Same thing, right? If it's what's doing is giving you a frame of reference. It allows you to take a very big abstract problem and boil it down into smaller problems. And then when you fit those things together, hopefully what you have is a picture that is the same thing you were trying to copy. So that's kind of the same thing your brain needs to be able to do when you're looking at poses and being like, I want that pose, get it over there. And once you get good at that, then the next thing is making sure that you're able to, like, it's one thing to look at a pose in a vacuum and then recreate it. That's a whole other thing to look at a pose in a series of poses and make sure that they have good spacing between them. So making sure that the difference between those poses are also very good. And so the right things are moving in the right amount. That is where it gets more complicated. And so that would be the next step. Once you start getting really good at posing, now you got to find a way of, okay, so how can I do it reliably in a way that those poses I can do in an order, and then they all feel like, because, you know, I always moan and whine about people that are having a hard time with their momentum. I talk about like momentum preservation and continuity of momentum. Basically, these little pops that happen when you're animating. These little pops are like usually inconsistencies to the speed or the spacing. Basically, you start a trend where it's like I'm moving my hand like this, and then suddenly it's like this, and then suddenly it's like this. It's like, well, what just happened? It was moving at a certain speed, almost stopped, and then jumped and like moved 4 or 5 times faster than the ones before it. These kind of problems happen when you are not good at doing the poses in a series, because you're not measuring the difference between those poses very well yet. But you will if you practice. So tonight is not about that yet. We haven't got into that yet. We will get into that, and when we get there, we'll talk about all these tricks that we can use to get good at that. The whole point of this series is to really make a very accessible window for people that want to get in animating. I want it to feel like anybody can just pick this up and start doing it. And if you're a veteran, I would recommend you take a stab at what I'm doing too, because you just might, if the very most, you might, or the very least, you might actually pick up a little couple things that you might want to incorporate in your own workflow. At best, you might be like, holy crap, I just want to try that because it just makes a lot of sense to me, and it may revolutionize the way you work. Who knows? You might also just be like, Brent's full of crap. I don't think it makes any sense. If you're making money and you're able to get the job done, then by all means. I'm not the kind of guy or person in general who judges people for their workflow. Sometimes I'll be like, I question it because it's sort of confusing to me that works for somebody, but like, you can't argue with results. The question you have to have, though, which is an honest one, you have to really honestly ask yourself this: is it really working? Because a lot of people, they have a way of working, but it's very inconsistent. It stresses them out. They don't really fully understand it. It's like they have these sort of bad animation days, otherwise known as I don't really know for sure how to animate yet. I have some good instincts, but they are different. They differ depending on the day, depending on how I'm feeling, depending on the challenge itself. This should provide you a much more concrete way of looking at animation and producing it consistently. That's the goal, the hope. Okay, that's about enough of the setup. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. So as promised, I said the next step will be opening up Motion Builder. But before that, even actually going into Mixamo and grabbing some animation, some motion capture data. The reason I'm going to do that is because it's faster. It's just faster to get to where I want to go. The next demo will be me keyframing from reference. That's fine, but it's a really quick way to prove a couple things to you, and like just trying a bunch of different animations basically, and just showing you how it would work. Once we extract those poses we need, it's very easy in Motion Builder to see that. I will also show you tonight how to do that in Maya if there's enough time. Let's get to it. So yeah, we're going to get first we're going to go shopping for some poses. So not the greatest data, like it's not amazing, but it's actually also not terrible. And the best part of it is that it's free and extremely searchable. And there's a lot to be learned from motion capture data. So Mixamo is pretty cool. If you want to find, there's 3 main things that Mixamo does. One of the things that Mixamo does is has a library of characters. And there's a lot of them. They're not amazing. They're a little dated, especially now. But there's still some decent ones in there, especially as a starter. Like you could always go in there and up-res it a little bit if you knew how to, do that kind of stuff. It's not bad. And the rigs are super simple. The one thing I don't know is they used to have a little tool. I don't know where you would find that anymore because I don't see it anywhere on their site. But that tool was an auto rigger that you could then use to like get a Maya rig to set up once you've downloaded it in Maya. Because when you download this, it's just an FBX, I believe. So kind of not super useful in Maya unless you want to use, say, an auto rigger in Maya, which you could definitely do. You could definitely do that. Another thing that you might not know about is if you take a look up here to the top right, you can see, there's a send to arrow as well. And the arrow, I believe, it's some sort of like some sort of animation like software in the Adobe suite. I don't remember. I've never used it, so I'm not sure exactly what that is. I've never used that button before. But the upload character is an interesting thing to talk about, because if you have a mesh that you want rigged, this is a really, really cool way to get it rigged. As long as it's a bipedal character, you just have to send it to like upload it, and then it'll give you like a screen grab of the front, and then it just like literally in screen space, all you need to do is show like tell it where its head is, where the elbows are, and where like the knees are, and it figures itself out, and it bones it, and then it skins the mesh, and it does a really good job, to be completely honest with you. The only problem is it's just a basic skeleton. It has no roll bones. So you're going to get candy wrapping in the wrists. It's a little bit ghetto, but if you know anything about skinning, you could take that as a base and then just add some influences basically. And then add some bones for the roll bones and then rig it up, and you're going to be golden. It's a very quick way of rigging things up if you're interested in exploring this. Again, free. It's free. If you haven't tried this, it'll blow your friggin' mind, to be honest, especially for those of you out there that really love the idea of grabbing a character that you like that's not rigged. You have a mesh, you got a buddy who does modeling. This is a really cool way to get it up and running without you having to go and learn how to friggin' skin, because skin weighting can be very painful, and it makes me sometimes want to gouge my eyeballs out. So I get that people don't really want to do that. All right, so let's get to the heart of it, shall we? I'm going to use this Mocap guy because I think he's I know I've already downloaded him, so he's good to go. Let me just go find some animation. So there's an animation tab up at the top here that we can also use. And so all I got to do is type some stuff in. So I'm naturally going to go type in jump because that's what we've been talking about so far. I'll grab jump, but I'll grab something else just to sort of prove that, that more than this works in more than one case of motions. Now, the cool thing about Mixamo is this is the most powerful thing about it, in my opinion, is that you see these. I don't think that there's not enough frames in these. I don't think. It's sometimes very abstract to really understand what the action is. And I find that the tagging is not the greatest. But again, it's free and it's a lot better than what else is out there. So it's still pretty cool if you don't mind spending the time kind of looking for something. So I'm looking for like basically a hop on the spot. I don't want anything more complicated. This one looks pretty good right here. I can click on it and then I get the data right there. And there it is. And the tools in here for navigating is just left mouse button is going to left click. And I keep in mind that everybody should have access to this. All you got to do is make a free Adobe account. So this is not special access or anything like that. The right mouse button in and out is going to give me the dollying, and then the panning is the middle mouse button. So it's pretty easy. It takes if you've been using Maya for a while and you switch to this, your brain's going to hurt a little bit because it's not, obviously has nothing to do with the alt keys, but you'll figure it out. So I'm going to grab this one. So all I got to do is say download, okay, up here, download, and then it's going to give me options. I want the FBX format, absolutely. 30 frames per second works fine for me. I think often in 30 frames per second because I work mostly in games these days, but you have a 24 if you want it. There's also a 60, and then I would recommend 60 if you're ever going to do any kind of slow motion stuff. That way you have more data to work with. And then the skin I don't need because I've already downloaded the skin. To download the skin, I just would have had to go back to the characters and then choose a character that I wanted and then download that separately. So I've already done that. I'll let you worry about that if you want to go grab a different skin. I like this character because it's simple. Proportions are very human. And so I know that the data is going to do a pretty good job mapping onto it in Motion Builder. I'm not going to have to worry about, I mean, it's going to work anyways because you can choose a character and it has its own retargeter. So once you choose a character to load into this interface, when you export, it will export the animation in a way that's already mapped for that character. Motion Builder will allow me to even, retarget that if there was a difference, but it'll be a very easy job in Motion Builder or Maya because it's meant for this character. It's going to do that for me on the export. So keep that in mind. Choose the character that you want to be using if you can. And that's another reason why upload exists, because you can actually upload your own character, have it rigged, and then apply motion capture data to it in here, like retarget it. So you don't even need Motion Builder. You can get it all retargeted. So by the time you export the animation out, it'll export it based on your character's dimensions. And then you bring that right into Maya and you're good to go. Again, I'll try to show that at the end, but Motion Builder is a little quicker, so I'll show that. For people who want to hang around to look at the Maya version, I will definitely indulge. So I'll go without skin. I don't need, oops, I don't need that because I've already downloaded it. I don't need it to do any kind of keyframing reduction. So I'll leave it pretty much like this. This is the only one I change is this up one, the top one up here, the skin. So I'll say download. I'm going to go and grab maybe another jump and then another something other than a jump. Let's just browse. You're going to have different versions of almost the same thing. This data is a bit better. It's very clear that the data was captured with different systems in my mind. I see there's a higher fidelity to the movement. Like when I look at this jump, it looks almost a little bit pose to pose there at the end. I don't see a lot of overlap or anything like that. So it's nice to kind of just browse around for something you want to, So I like this one way more. I'll grab this one. So I'll download this one too. Go ahead I'm just doing shopping. Just shopping for animation right now. You can see that's downloading down here in my in the bottom of my interface. Oh, I don't know if you can see that because my camera's over top of it, but it's just downloading to my browser. So it's going to my downloads folder, which we'll go find and collect in a little bit. And let's see if there's any other jumps I want to take a look at. No, it'll be fine. I think that's good. So what else should I grab? What should I search for? Something that is something that would be complete and self-contained, ideally, like I could do a sidestep. Maybe is there a sidestep in here? So I'm going to grab this one if you don't mind. I think it's a nice complicated one. I'll grab it. Yeah. So that should be enough for tonight. A good jump. So that's it. We're good. We're good to go. We don't need Mixamo anymore. Let's use Motion Builder first. So Motion Builder might feel a little bit alien to many, if not most of you. Motion capture work is a very close cousin of animation. I mean, I plan on really trying my best to convince all of you of this, that you don't need to be scared of it. Give me time. I will work on you. I'll convert all of you eventually. All right, so let's bring it in. So I need to bring in my character. So I need to merge that. Well, I'll just open it directly here. I'm just opening the file. FBX is the native format of Motion Builder. So you don't even have to import an FBX. You just literally open it, which is pretty cool. There he is in his wonderful glory. So I got it in here, and to get this character up and running, all I need to do is characterize it. I'm not going to really get into all the explanation here because that's not really the point of this particular demo. But just to be verbose so you understand what the hell I'm doing, it's a characterization process is, oops, hold on. I got to show my rig, my skeleton. The characterization process is how Motion Builder retargets everything. Basically, you need to tell it what kind of a rig it is, what kind of character it is. So you have the ability now, because I've defined this character. And by the way, just if you wanted to see that, it is there. Essentially, what if I were to click on all these guys here, what it's doing is it's translating. It wants to know what the and by the way, some of you might have already been exposed to this because it's in Maya already, this human IK sort of character scale characterization. I think it's called something different in Maya, but it's the same thing. Basically, you're defining each one of these bones so that Maya understands based on its own template of what a human skeleton has. You're like, oh yeah, well the head bone is actually called this on this skeleton. That way it can deal with different naming conventions, basically. But it does a lot more than that. It's also making measurements of the character skeleton. There's a couple landmark measurements that it makes to understand the scale of the skeleton, and it's very helpful for its retargeting algorithm, so that it knows how to take data that was captured on a very small character and then it can apply it on a very big character, or vice versa. Basically, there's a whole pile of like data scaling that needs to get accounted for to account for the different skeletons in different proportions. So that's basically the characterization in a nutshell. It's a way of defining, but also a way of measuring a character. This is very common in any kind of retargeting environment. Unreal has retargeting in it. Basically, any motion capture capturing software is going to have this kind of stuff. It's sort of par for the course. All right, so we got it all characterized right now, which is good. I didn't technically need to do this, by the way. I just like this because it gives me a character rig to work with, not automatically. What I would need to do now that I've oh, by the way, you might be wondering, why was it so easy? I just clicked and dragged. It's because Mixamo is using a default naming template that it works with a Motion Builder. So Motion Builder knew how to interpret all of those, the strings of all of those, the names of all those bones, and it characterized it automatically. I didn't have to do anything. And Motion Builder wants you to characterize something in the T-pose, and Mixamo their characters are going to be exported in T-pose, so it's kind of half the work is done for you, basically. So now that I have this in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge. I'm going to do a merge, and I'm going to essentially bring in the jump first. Actually, I'll bring them both in, jump and dodging back. And I'm just doing that by control clicking on a bunch of the files that I downloaded, the two of them that I wanted to bring in. I'll say open. And then it's going to give me an interface here. And what I want to do is, it's the append that I want. You have a bunch of options. You have append, merge, and discard. Basically, it's different ways of saying something that's done similarly in Maya. If a discard would be like literally just don't even bring it in. A merge is going to bring in another version of it if it exists in the scene, or just bring it in if it doesn't exist in the scene already. That's what these are down here, merge. And then the append is, oh, okay, if those things, so for instance, those FBX exports of the animation from Mixamo, what they are is skeletons only, no mesh, with animation on them. That skeleton already exists in my Motion Builder file. So I don't want to bring in another version of the skeleton with animation on it. What I wanted to do is update. I wanted to create what's called a take in Motion Builder containing the animation data for the skeleton, the skeletal bones that are already in the scene. Because it's going to see that, oh, hey, this animation file has a bunch of bones that you have in this scene already, but it's got animation on it. Would you want me to just bring in the animation? Yes, I would. That's what append's going to do, which is different than merge. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that. This stuff you can kind of ignore. Basically, though I'm not, this allows me to filter what I'm bringing in, but the only thing I'm bringing in is essentially animation data, because that's all it's really there, especially because I'm going to be doing an append. So I don't have to worry about the options so much as long as they're default to append. And these are, don't even worry about these because there's nothing coming in. There's no cameras coming in or anything like that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say merge. Should be fine. And merge again. Why did that? Oh, that's because okay. I'm doing this the wrong way. Hold on a second. I screwed up. Not merge. I meant to do a motion file import. It's a little faster, a little bit easier to understand this particular workflow. So I'm just going to do a motion file import, and then I will do what I did before. Control click on these two, say open, and it gives me a dialog box. I want to choose merge here, and then it shows me I'm going to bring in these two takes. Okay, basically I'll leave all the options pretty much default other than I'm going to do a merge. And I'll say import. And now you can see right away that it's already changed to a take. Let me get rid of the skeleton so we can see the characters a bit better here. And I got two new takes. And takes, by the way, are pretty much people's favorite thing about Motion Builder. Imagine having a Maya file. Okay, imagine for a second you have a Maya file, but instead, and there are ways of doing this with override layers, which we'll be using a little bit later tonight, but it's just clunky and it's not very performant. This is really streamlined and super performant. Performant meaning that it doesn't slow things down into a freaking snail's pace. Basically what it is, it's like having multiple versions of animations on different dimensions almost of the timeline. It's like almost like having a bunch of pages to a book, and I can then just bring in different animation datas that all start at frame 0. I don't have to like stack them or put them in override layers or do anything weird like that. But this is pretty dope because you can see here, this was the original take, which is just a single timeline of like 0 frames of just a pose. And then we end up with Mixamo number 1, which we'll rename these takes, which is, look, it's got its own timeline with its own animation data on it on the same skeleton. This is not duplicated or anything like that. It's just freaking fantastic. There they are. Imagine. And then imagine, if you will, if you wanted to then export out these animations, and you wanted to do that, like, so you're working on a game and you have a whole pile of takes with different animations for different actions. You can literally in one export option export them all out into individual files from all these different takes, and like it just speeds things up tremendously. That's why the game industry keeps using it, because Maya sucks. It sucks at this really, really bad. Where Motion Builder, it's just built for this kind of stuff. Okay, so, I mean, I don't hate Maya. I think Maya's awesome, but it's certainly not good at this. So now I got these two different files. So what I promised you I'd show you tonight was to take a look at what would happen if I were to use my philosophy where I went through the video and picked those little poses. Now I'm going to do it in practice with 3-dimensional data, not just a video. And then we'll be able to see in 3D what that actually looks like on a character. It's going to interpolate between those poses, and you're going to see that it does a pretty good job. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a damn good block. You're going to need to break things down. You're going to need to be able to play with some splines. You're going to need to do some work to it. It's not going to be free, but, you know, and you could exaggerate it. You could change the time. You can change the poses because you just throw, people are scared of motion capture data because it's keys on every frame. And that gives people a friggin' heart attack, animators at least. And so imagine be able to have your cake and eat it too. Imagine you get to have your poses, the things you'd be probably spending a couple days working on a complex shot, but you can have them in 5 minutes. And then they might not be perfect. You might want to work with them and make them even better. Well, then go ahead and spend time working with them. At least you're making changes relative to an already good base as opposed to starting from scratch. It's always a little intimidating to start a shot in Maya with a reference video next to you and, you know, the character's in this bind pose. And it's like, oh my God. Here we go. It's like, you know, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time to pose the characters in a nice way. So, you know, how about I can just do this instead? And then I get my poses. And even if I don't use them all verbatim, I have them even just within 70% of the ballpark. Imagine how much that would speed up your workflow. I'll let you do the math. Okay, so what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to just make sure I have a character rig. Right now I don't. So I'm going to go up here to source and say control rig, and it's going to ask me if I want to make one. I'm going to say yes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to source, or go to none, so go back to source and set it to none, which brings me back to the skeleton. Because right now this animation's on the character skeleton. I'm not going to get into exactly how Motion Builder works, but right now, it's playing on the skeleton, but I want to get it to the control rig. So I need to bake it basically onto the control rig. So I'll just go to bake/plot and go to control rig. And I'm going to hit the options because I want to say all takes. This way, in one quick move, I will plot both of those takes, well, technically all three of them, onto the control rig. So now I'm using the control rig. You don't see it right now because it's hidden, but let me unhide it. There it is. So now you can see that the control rig is moving around, but it's still data on every frame. Because if I select something, you'll see keys on every frame. Terrifying, but it's on the control rig, so it's at least easy to modify. I'm not stuck with like just moving things in FK space. I can move things in kind of like an IK space. But that doesn't really matter because that's not what we're going to do tonight. What we're going to do now that it's there, I'm going to, on both these takes, I'm going to create a layer. And I'm going to do that by going over to this. Well, let me move this. This is all kind of messed up right now. Let me just clean this up a little bit. Come on, you can do it. There we go. All right. So there's actually already an animation layer there, so I'm going to just use it. But I will right click on it and I'm going to say layer mode override. You have the same thing in Maya, which we will see very shortly. So now that we're in animation layer 1, and I like these layers in Motion Builder because they're per take, which is nice, and they're global to all the things on the character. They all are contained. Like anything involving the character is on. I don't have to assign character controllers or anything like that to a take. It makes it a little simpler. It's just like sorry, not a take. I mean layer. Layers are just there, and no matter what, everything has access to it. I just prefer that. I find it clunky that you have to remember to assign objects to a layer in Maya. So. Now that I'm in the override layer, there's a little trick that I can do. So I'm going to go and bring the weight of that layer down to 0. This is the same trick I'm going to do in Maya. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scrub through this animation and look for, I'm going to do this on the other jump first. You see this take is not set to override layer because these layers are, they are independent to different takes, but they're not independent to all the objects or the controllers. So I'm going to use this one because it's a little simpler to start with. But basically what I'm going to do is scrub through here, find the poses I want, and set a key on it. But the weight of that override layer needs to be 0. I repeat, set your weight to 0 if you're going to do this in Motion Builder and in Maya because it's the same thing. So what I'm going to do is, just like yesterday, I'm going to go and find a starting pose, right? Make sure you have something selected over here on the rig. I'm going to hit K. K is the default key button as opposed to S in Maya in Motion Builder. And I'm going to go down into I'm looking for my anticipation pose. I'm also making sure that I'm in full body mode up here. That's why I'm getting these red keys. It's another thing. If you want to try to do this in Motion Builder, if you have access to it, then make sure that that's set correctly. And then I'm just going to hit K on these again, just because I wasn't exactly in the right mode, but pretty much close enough probably. And then I'm looking for the last pose. It's a little floaty, this data. But you know, I'm going to say that, let's say this is my last pose on the ground. It's not great, but I can clean that up because just because I take this pose doesn't mean I need to use it like this. I can definitely, absolutely, I can definitely tweak these poses after the fact. And now I'm going to go into find my action pose. Again, I've covered all these poses, so I'm not coming up with anything new right now. Let me get rid of that rig just because it's a little easier to see this character without all that rig in the way. I'm just hitting Control A a couple times to cycle through the different visibility modes. Now I'm in models only, but I can still have my picker over here to grab the rig. And now I'm just looking for the contact pose, the landing pose, unsurprisingly. I'm going to grab that guy right there. And then I'm going to look for, and technically he's got another contact pose. So I'm going to go grab this pose as well. Okay. And grab that pose because I really, any limb that touches the ground or takes off. So that means I'd have to go and take a look at this takeoff as well. And technically I should be using this as a takeoff pose as well if I really wanted to get fancy. So let's get fancy. Let's do that. I love fancy. I'll grab that. It's going to make it a little bit tighter, the data. And it just follows my rule a little bit more carefully. And then I need my reaction pose, which is like the low point right here. So right there is a good pose for that. And then I want my recovery. He doesn't really do a settle because he recovers so slowly. So he's kind of in control, but he kind of does because he comes up here like this and then the arms settle. You know what I mean? So I'm going to say something like this is going to be my recovery. And then he kind of settles by moving upwards a little bit and kind of corrects himself and lets the arms sort of swing back. That ending is going to be the hardest part to sell. It's going to require a little bit of breakdown for sure, because big gaps between keys is not the friend here. It's where things are going to end up having issue, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll look at this data and see what it looks like. So now that I have this, now that I am, now that I'm cooking here with oil and I've got all those keys, now it makes it very easy for me to preview this. So if I hit play, nothing's going to change because it's all weight to 0. But those keys were captured. Using the weight of 0, it allows the key to pass through and get captured, but not used. As soon as I do this, now I'm going to be hitting play and I'll see only the only thing that's going to be interpolating between on the rig here are going to be the keys that I grabbed. So as you can see, what you're seeing, let me make sure it's on loop here. As you can see, it's actually not too bad. You know what I mean? It's not great. It's not perfect. It's missing a lot of stuff. But I mean, I know animators that would love to have a block that looks this good. The timing is good. The poses are working. Now it would just be up to us to kind of tweak it a little bit, right? So I'm going to come back and tweak this. But before I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the other one, that other more complicated action, because that one's going to be a little bit more impressive because there's a lot more going on there. And you'll see that I will get similar results. So this is going to just get better as soon as I add some breakdowns, and as soon as I go and maybe add some favors to the top pose on the action to give it a little bit of hang time, I can take this very quickly and make it look way better. But let's save that for a little bit later. So let's go over here, do exactly the same thing. I've already got it set to 0, the weight. I've already got this override layer. So let's just go and make it happen. So I'm going to start right away with a key here. And I'm going to go and look for my anticipation pose, which is this down pose, right? We got, like usual, there's usually an anticipation before an action. So let's go and find that kind of low point here. And I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to look for a takeoff pose. Technically, there's like 2. There's one right there, and then there's another one right there. They're very soon after one another, but that's okay. And then I'm looking for one right there. Well, first I need an action pose. So the action pose is kind of right about there, I think. Kind of the highest point. And then it starts to come down on the arc, and I'm going to say that's the first contact, and then there's going to be... This one gets complicated here because now it's like, okay, but now what? Because you can see there's a contact here, but it doesn't really do much here. It's like there's actually technically a small reaction pose here. Because see, because it goes down and the leg compresses a little bit right about here, and then it's going to launch again. See, because he pushes off with that leg. So you got to be thinking about the action. You got to remember what they're there for. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in all of this. What's happening? Well, I mean, he's landing and then he's propelling himself again with that one foot. So, you know, don't get tricked into thinking it's like, oh, wait until like this foot lands. No, who cares? It's like that technically he's up in the air and he's landed here. But like I said before, he's not going to recover and settle. He's going to daisy chain. He's going to go into that reaction, that squash pose, which acts like an anticipation for the next launch. That's how my anatomy of action sort of concept works here. So I'm just looking for kind of like a pose, like maybe like this, maybe right before he starts to push. This is a good pose right here. I'll take that one and I'm going to look for another takeoff right there. Take that one there. And then I'm looking for, technically I should be looking for another action pose here. It's just 2 frames after that, which is, you know, sometimes that's how, and then look at this. This contact happens like literally almost right afterwards. I'm going to not grab this one. Well, yeah, that looks like it's actually the one I want. So it's like, sometimes you're going to see this is going to happen. And sometimes you can consolidate this a little bit and clean it up and just be like, okay, screw it. It's on the same pose. But I'm going to go ahead and let this happen a little bit and have things happen like right after another, even though I could make it a little simpler for myself. Because I often don't like it when I have 2 keys right next to each other. That it is a bit of a disaster when it comes to timing. So if I want to retime this or repose this, I'm going to probably have to make some changes here or be very careful with those changes. Otherwise, I'm going to get those pops in the momentum like we were talking about earlier. So now I want to look for another compression pose. You can see here, right? Because he's really landed here. He's really using that one leg to do the landing. But this time, he's going to go into, there's going to be a series of actions here that are going to happen afterwards. So there's going to be a kind of a compression right here. And then there's going to be kind of like, there's not really another action per se, but there's another landing pose right here. And I'm actually going to grab this pose here as my action, just to give a little bit of more separation. So I just grabbed this pose here and I deleted this one. I didn't move that key because I want to resample a different pose here. That's why I created a new one and deleted the old one. And then I'm going to go grab that. There is another landing. And then you're going to see after that landing, there's going to be kind of like another takeoff pose. You can see right here. There's going to be I'll say that pose there. And then another contact, like landing on that one there. Right now, I'm just focusing on the contacts and takeoffs for their feet. And that will give me most of what I need. And then after that landing, I want to kind of recover a bit. Actually, there's another little step there, but I'm going to probably cheat and just be like, I'll just forget, like, not worry about that so much, probably. Well, no, I'm going to take that. I'll take that takeoff and then a landing right here. And then I'm going to go and just kind of go into a final pose here, basically. Okay. Now I just want to make sure that I might want another, like a kind of an action pose here. It's not really much of one. It's not really an up pose. So I'm really treating the action almost like a breakdown here in between the takeoff and there's a landing here. So technically, it's not really a takeoff, is it? An action pose is more like a kind of a reaction, I guess. I just am breaking it down because I know that I'm going to need a bit of a breakdown between that landing there and this takeoff here. Otherwise, it's going to feel a little bit too floaty. So sometimes and you'll see, I'm going to go and probably add a couple more breakdowns after I take a look at this. But I mean, look, I started with 80 frames, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I've reduced this by like 20%, right? It's 20% of the key density. I've kept only 20 keys out of 80. Well, less than 20. And so that's a pretty good ratio, really. You could work with this. It's not that many. It's not overwhelming. And you're going to have something like this anyways if you're doing your job properly and using my anatomy of action using a video reference, because it's the same. I'm just working with 3D data, so I get to see what it would look like on a character right away rather than pick those and then take the very time-consuming process of putting it onto a character. So let me go ahead and hit the play button here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course, it's not showing me anything other than just the data right now because I got to turn this on, and I'm going to hit play. And you're going to be surprised. It looks very, very similar, there is definitely an issue right in here that I feel like needs to be accounted for. But it's, no, it's not really an issue. It's just how fast that action is. It's kind of fascinating when you think about that. Look at this. Look. That's not bad. That's just the keys I grabbed. Now imagine you were that good at animating and you were just looking at video reference. You're like, you know, take that pose, that pose, that pose. And then from there, you're going to be doing what animators do and exaggerate timing, exaggerate, you know, the poses. You can do whatever you want at this point because I'm not dealing with keys on every frame. I'm only grabbing a bunch of keys that I know that I need. And because they're pillars of the action, it's very easy for me to make the anticipation deeper, make the action pose a little higher, make the takeoff and the landings a little straighter. I can purify this. I can change the line of action and make it a bit more pure, a little bit more graphic. All these things are so easy to do when I'm already like 80% of the way there. That's the beauty of this. So this is just, I did this tonight just because I want to show you, and I will show you quickly how to do this in Maya. And I'm not going to modify this stuff. I'm not really going to play with it yet. I'll save this scene so we can do like pick up where we left off on the next stream. But basically what I wanted to show you was my anatomy of an action in like quickly in practice. Basically, how can I just prove that it works in a really, really quick way? And so I think I've probably done that, hopefully, for most of you. If there were any non-believers in here, you can see that, you know, there's no trick here. This is not, I'm not playing the original data. The original data looks like this. It's smoother for sure, absolutely, and it's got a couple little things that I'm missing, but they'd be very easy to pick, to grab those things that are missing, which we'll talk about next time, where we go and we maybe shop for some breakdowns, because there's going to be some big gaps here, especially like right here. There's a big gap between these two keys. There's actually pretty good density here, so that's why it's looking pretty good. So anytime, like I don't really feel the need to put too much extra stuff in here because all the main things are accounted for with the anatomy of an action. You'll be hard pressed to find a big departure or big disparities if you're doing this right. Okay. And you could see that like even just by just scrubbing between the weight on and off here, you could see the difference between the original data right here and the captured interpolation. There it is. So if you see a huge difference, then it's a problem. But that's not a gigantic difference. It's a little bit of a difference on the pose. It's maybe nicer because it's a bit more asymmetric. But again, a breakdown would solve that very nicely. And maybe the question is, do I want to capture this one? Because the thing about animating when poses like this is I want to worry about the poses first and then do my breakdowns. If I capture too many breakdowns from this data, I just have more things to edit. Right? If I could just change the poses and make them bigger and then allow Motion Builder to interpolate between those poses by default and then just find a nice middle point and set a key and then shape my breakdown there, I avoid those pops and momentum problem that I'm going to have. Because if I go and like want to like capture too much of this and then I want to change it by too much, then yeah, absolutely 100%. I'm going to have to be very careful with how I can't just adjust the poses. I have to also adjust the breakdowns to fit what I'm doing with the poses that are on both ends of those breakdowns. Hopefully that is clear and it clicks with a lot of you, hopefully all of you. But that's basically my philosophy: is less is more, because you're gonna probably want to do your breakdowns anyways, because you're probably gonna want to be making a lot of changes. You want to take ownership of this scene, which is what we'll do next time. But for now, I just wanted to be able to demonstrate this. So let's go over to Maya, just so the alt-click crew can get a little taste of this as well without having to go hunt down a copy of Motion Builder. So let's go and do basically the same kind of thing. I'm going to need to import, and I'm just browsing for the passive marker man because I need that to load data onto. So I'm going to go find that in my downloads folder. So this is my passive marker man. He came in with all his markers and everything. If I go to wireframe, you can see his skeleton is there. Everything's good. If you want to double check to make sure everything's good, you can always just pose him a little bit and he's good. All right. Now, to bring in motion capture data into Maya, there's lots of ways of doing it. But the way that I do it is I just do a merge. I merge FBX like this. So I'm going to go and do another import. But this time what I'm going to do is... I'm going to grab the jump one because it's a little simpler. And if I go and what I'm going to do here is I'm just picking the FBX jump. But if I scroll down a little bit, I'll have some options available for myself in the current preset. I can pick I can pick Autodesk Media and Entertainment as a preset. And then right here, it's going to bring it right to what I want, which is going to be add and update animation. I'm just going to say update animation. What that does is similar to append. There's already a skeleton in there. So I'm going to just do the update animation, which is the same as doing the append like I was doing before. It's going to look and say, oh, hey, incoming data has got a bunch of these bones with animation data on it. What do I have in my scene? Oh, what do you know? I got bones of the same names. Now what I'm going to do is then instead just bring an update, like add essentially. Now there's no takes here, so you have to be a bit more careful because you can break your scene really easily by doing this. But I don't have any data in here yet, so I'm free to just go right ahead and do this update animation. That's going to replace the data, the animation data on these bones. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to say import, and there you go. Now I got this take, and it will typically, I find that sometimes it doesn't do this properly, but it also expanded my timeline to match the animation I just brought in. And there it is. The data is in here and ready to be screwed with. So I don't have a control rig, so I'm going to only be able to work in skeleton space right now, but I can still basically do what I want to do. To do this workflow really, really well, you would want to, and I don't have enough experience with this yet, but I would probably have to use maybe a same sort of setup, like a full body IK setup or something like that, so I can have a similar workflow inside of Maya here. But if I wanted a custom rig, it gets a little trickier. You would need to build a script that allowed you to essentially constrain the rig to the skeleton if you wanted to continue animating with a rig in Maya. It's a little clunky in Maya, like I said. If you don't mind using the human IK rig, then you're good. But I don't know. It leaves something to be desired in Maya, in my opinion. And I think it'd be cooler to be able to have it on a custom rig on a character, and then you'd be gold, because you could theoretically go and find your favorite character rig in Maya, export it into Motion. Not export it into Motion Builder, but like bring in, like, because it's going to have bones, obviously. You could then, you could. Kind of a long story, but you need to find a way of getting the data onto it or retarget it on it. You have to either do that in Mixamo by uploading that character, just like the skeleton and the mesh, to Mixamo, and then get the animation on it and then export it out and then bring it onto the character here. But then you'd have to turn off all the controllers because they're not going to listen to animation on the bones by default. So there's a bit of a workflow here if you really wanted to kind of really do this, which maybe we can cover in future sort of streams. But there's a bunch of, it's not as streamlined as it is in Motion Builder, which is why All About Animation was like, hey, why are you even trying to do this, Maya? So basically, while it's here, just to demonstrate really quickly, what I could do is something very similar. I'm just going to go and grab the hips, select a hierarchy for the hips, and make an animation layer for the hips. And I'm going to then bring that animation layer to 0. I'm going to change that layer to override, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did in Motion Builder, but I have to have the whole skeleton selected because that's the only way this is going to be moving around. So let's see here, and it's going to be not as great because it's not going to stabilize things the same way that the control rig in Motion Builder would. So it's not going to be the greatest, and I might even have some weird like Euler flips and stuff like this going on some of the limbs. We'll see what happens, but I'll be highly suspicious that it's going to work out perfectly. So I'm going to take this first pose and hit S this time because I'm in Maya, and I'm going to continue to look for poses. There's my anticipation pose, and then I'm going to go look for the takeoff pose. I'm going to ignore that other foot there. I'm just going to use this one here. Takeoff pose, action pose, landing pose. I'll do this other landing pose here as well. And then I want a kind of reaction pose. And then I want kind of like what I had before, which is kind of like this arm is in its highest position here. So I'll use that as kind of my recovery pose. And then I'll just find the last pose as my subtle pose. So if I go and do the same thing I did in Motion Builder and just do this, it will now expose only those. Now you can see the problem, right? Because there's no IK like I was saying, there's nothing to stabilize this, then the issue is going to be that my feet are going to go through the ground because it's all in FK space, right? But you can see that it is doing a pretty good job again of capturing those poses, and they look pretty decent. It's like what needs to be there, other than the fact that the feet are going through the ground because it has nothing telling them not to. It's pretty good, and it gives me pretty good results. Luckily, I'm not getting any flipping on the arms, but you know, your mileage may vary. So that's basically what I wanted to show you tonight. I just wanted to show you really not a technical demonstration per se, but instead just a conceptual demonstration of the anatomy of an action to prove out that those poses that I am always looking for are very robust and are going to give you pretty good results as long as you're willing to sort of think it through. Like you saw in the second one in Motion Builder, it wasn't just super straightforward, right? It wasn't just like using it like in order that I kind of explained them. And there's, you know, there's 2 takeoffs and 2 landings. So there's 2 feet, and he's not jumping and like taking off and landing with both feet at the same time. And it got a little hectic there. I'm just looking for any pose that fits. Doesn't always have to be necessarily in the order you expect. As long as you find those poses and make sure you lock them in, you're going to be good. So hopefully this was educational. Hopefully this is, you know, this is certainly not mandatory watching for this learning path that I'm kind of playing with right here. It is instead just kind of more just a proof of concept that just see it all kind of in action and you know, seeing how it works on a character without like imagining what that would look like. Now you see, right? Okay, so have a really great night. Have a really good weekend. We'll see you next week for sure. So please come and hang out. Cheers. Have a good one.